Cartoons, I feel for the longest time, have always gotten a bad rap. It seemed like no matter what the quality of what was on screen was, it was always being minimized because cartoons are for kids. And don't get me wrong, there are a lot of shows out there which are simply stupid visual clutter to distract your children for 10 minutes. But within that clutter of mess are born some absolute gems, completely subverting the audience's perception of what it's supposed to be and creating a product that will stand the test of time. And today, we are talking about Teen Titans. I don't know a single person who hadn't watched this series, and to this day, whenever I see these characters referenced by fans, it's almost always this iteration of these characters. The show left a massive footprint on pop culture. But what made Teen Titans stand out from the rest even after all these years? Were the characters really that great? Was the story truly compelling? Or was it all just one of Robin's smoke bombs? So join me as I go through and see why Teen Titans was so memorable. Teen Titans was originally released in July of 2003 and aired for 65 episodes across 5 seasons on Cartoon Network. The show followed 5 heroes, Robin, Starfire, Cyborg, Beastboy, and Raven, as they fought crime protecting their city, all while dealing with their own personal struggles. Like most cartoons at the time, the format was told episodically, meaning that each episode was its own self-contained story. For the most part, it didn't matter which order you watched it in. This format really allowed the writers to focus on delivering the greater messages and themes they wanted the viewers to take away. Something that would later get the show praised for in the future were these more mature themes. But it wasn't always like this. In the beginning of its inception, Teen Titans was supposed to be made for kids, 6 to 8-year-olds to be exact. The executive producer at the time brought up how other shows like Justice League and Samurai Jack were catering more towards teens while the younger demographic were being left out. So this led the show to adopt a very comedic style from the get-go. Inspired by Japanese anime, character expressions would often be over-exaggerated and much of its comedic elements would resort to over-the-top slapstick scenarios. But when it came to the actual substance being delivered, this is where the show truly got its fan base. While Teen Titans was still technically a kids show, there is a vast difference between making a show for a younger audience and treating the audience like they're kids. Teen Titans, quite frankly, never treated its audience as though they were kids. Despite the initial sales pitch being that they were intending to target a 6 to 8-year-old audience, many of the themes and lessons present in each episode were very much more relatable to teens. And I mean, it should be. For a show named Teen Titans, you'd hope that teens would be the target demographic. And I don't know if this was just simply a disconnect in perception, because this claim was made in mid-season 2. It was in the middle of the Terra arc, and that arc is not a kid's arc. Maybe back then the standard for what a kids show was much higher, but at least for the people making the show, they seem to be aware that teens were most relating to their story, and they evolved, adding much darker storylines as time went on. And I guess I'll briefly mention the show's design. Glenn Murakami was one of the series' producer, but he was also in charge of its animation. At the time, he was working on Justice League when he was approached to work on a new project. They really wanted to take it in a direction completely different to that of Justice League, and part of that was the aesthetic of the entire series. Glenn had seen anime and manga influence make their way into comic books, but he'd never seen them make their way into cartoons, and so this spurred him to design what would later be its iconic art style. A lot of Japanese inspiration was taken when the show was getting made. Plus, just to wedge this in here somewhere, they also got their theme song to be sung by Japanese pop rock duo Puffy Amiyumi in both English and Japanese, and it is, and I unironically say this, on the Mount Rushmore of theme songs, Teen Titans is up there. A bonus fun fact is that the series actually uses the Japanese version of the theme song in one-off episodes that deal with more comedic tones. But anyway, back to the art style. It came across great in each of the Titans' main designs. Part of a good character design is being able to tell who someone is simply by looking at them. Robin, the only one who wears a mask, almost as if it's his uniform and he never takes it off because he's always on the job. It adds an air of mystery to him despite not being the most mysterious member. Starfire, incredibly bright and bubbly both in personality and costume. She wears a lot of vibrant colors and shows a lot of skin like she has nothing to hide. And in complete contrast, there's Raven, almost the exact opposite to Starfire. She dresses in dark colors and covers up as much of herself as possible. She's hiding something, she's not an open book like Star. Beastboy is always given the most expressive facial features, usually making him look the goofiest, thus the comedic relief. And Cyborg, well, he looks like a cyborg, he's the tech guy, but he's also physically bigger than everyone else, which makes him more boisterous than everyone else. This show didn't invent these characters, but they did do a damn good job at staying true to how they are. And now we get to the Titans themselves. A very interesting prospect the show made out to do since the beginning was never addressing the secret identities. The producers found it important for kids watching to be able to identify with the characters, and this involved boiling everyone down to their most basic element: the alien, the robot, the witch, the shapeshifter, and so on. The moment a secret identity is thrown in, they become less relatable. And while this seems like it might be a hindrance, in a sense, this perspective really did help out the show. Secret identities are important, there's no denying that, but what wound up happening is that by ignoring the secret identity entirely, who the Titans are is simply just who they are. Their strengths, their weaknesses, and most importantly, their personality is just them. We don't have to witness Dick Grayson act like a normal functioning member of society and then turn on into being a slightly edgy hero. He just is always a hero. The show doesn't ignore their identities altogether though. Each of them at one point or another is either directly called by their real name or alluded to who they are, except for Raven.
There is good and there is evil, but the line between them can be almost impossible to find.
Robin, I would say, is actually the least relatable of all of the Titans. He, more than the others, sticks true to a comic book character. He's the leader. He's stoic, selfless, brooding, stubborn, and yet also kind. He actually resembles much of Batman in terms of his leadership and dedication to the job. However, gets much more breathing room to act like a teen and goof off with his friends from time to time. But probably the most important aspect about him is that he's the only one without powers. In this show, he's the embodiment of showcasing that you don't need superpowers to be a hero. He works hard and is determined, and it is through his attitude that supports and props up his friends to make them the best versions of themselves that they can be.
Observe! I am a Rorfian Zopgar! On my planet, this is hilarious.
Starfire is often used as the most relatable character when it comes to the problems she goes through. She's sweet and cheerful while also being a bit naive, but not stupid. Her problems are more often than not something that a large portion of the viewer base can relate to: jealousy, insecurity, and feeling like you don't belong. Accentuated in her case since she is an alien. In the episode Sisters, we are introduced to Blackfire, Starfire's cooler older sister. All of the other Titans almost immediately take interest in her, and she fits in with the group quite well. And this causes Starfire to feel like she's being replaced, and it's only further perpetuated when Cyborg suggests that she join the team. She's constantly in her own mind about the whole situation, like her friends no longer like her because they're making another friend. And this almost causes Starfire to leave the team altogether, believing that everyone will be happier without her. But at the end of the episode, after it's been revealed that Blackfire served a more antagonistic presence, Robin reassures her that she was never in danger of losing them as friends.
I am just glad that the truth was discovered before I was replaced.
What are you talking about?
Well, everyone was having such fun with her, and then Cyborg said,
Look, your sister was interesting, but she could never take your place. No one could ever take your place.
Not only was that smooth as silky by Robin, but Starfire was effectively in her own head the entire time. Yeah, it did coincidentally coincide with her sister actually trying to take her place, but even had she not, the message would remain the same. Starfire is still Starfire, and all of the things that we like about her aren't going to change because someone similar appears. In fact, this is a common theme for Starfire, which appears multiple times throughout the series. In the episode Transformation, Starfire goes through what is effectively Tamaranian puberty. Obviously one of the most relatable subjects for teens watching. But this time she feels like she doesn't fit in due to her physical changing. And similar to the lesson learned with Blackfire, it is who she is that they care about, not how she looks.
Please do not reject me. I am almost normal.
You're exactly as you should be. No matter how you change on the outside, you'll always be Starfire on the inside.
But speaking about who Starfire is, probably her strongest and most endearing asset is her kindness. And no episode better showcases this more than Season 4, Episode 6, Trock. This episode is one of the most renowned in the entire series, and for good reason. In this episode, we are introduced to Valyor, an alien hero who's traveling the galaxy destroying his enemies. By all stretches of the imagination, he is a hero similar to the Titans, more in fact, as he's meant to be grown up and professional. He gets along with everyone very well, he's incredibly personable, and in the eyes of everyone, he is a true hero. The image of what they're going to become when they're adults. But there's one not so hidden trait about him. He's racist, specifically towards Tamaranians. And throughout the episode, he subtly and not so subtly continues to disparage Starfire until she finally understands what's going on. He actively avoids including her, and when he does, he sends her on dangerous missions which will likely get her hurt. This completely bypasses all of the other Titans, as the way he's going about insulting her is through a nickname, Trock. Everyone else got a nickname, but Starfire's just so happened to be in a language that only she would understand. Throughout the episode, you see how Valyor has effectively lowered Starfire's self-worth, and she begins to feel how he's treating her. But it's not until Cyborg accidentally mirrors Valyor's language and calls her Trock without knowing the meaning behind it that she divulges what he's been doing.
You do not call me that.
But Valyor calls you Trock all the time.
That does not make it right.
What's up? I thought you said it didn't mean anything.
No, I said it means nothing. When Valyor calls me Trock, he is saying that I am worthless. A nothing.
Star.
There are those on other planets who feel Tamaranians are inferior. Trock is what they call us.
But we do get a hilarious response from Cyborg relating to what it's like to be judged based on how he looks.
So he's calling you a terrible name. And you know that if you punch him out, it'll just confirm all the bad stuff he thinks about you.
Yes. You know what it feels like to be judged simply because of how you look?
Of course I do. I'm part robot.
I mean, come on. Aside from the unintentional hilarity of that, Cyborg immediately wants to tell Robin, which he does despite Starfire's hesitation. And it's incredibly sad to see how willing Starfire is to preserve Robin's perception of Valyor. He thinks of him as a hero and he's looking up to him, and she doesn't want to taint that image, whether it be true or fake. But luckily Cyborg is there to not have her allow this. And Robin's response to hearing this is spectacular as well. There is not a moment's hesitation, not believing that it could possibly be a misunderstanding. As soon as hearing the information, all respect is thrown out the window with nothing left, and he almost immediately goes to fight him and force him to apologize. But yet again, perfectly understanding the chain of importance in this episode, that is how Robin deals with his problems. But this isn't a Robin problem, as much as he may want it to be. So instead, Starfire deals with it in her own way, initially asking everyone to simply ignore it, as they were still on a mission and her feelings were not as important as saving lives. And on this mission, Starfire showcases exactly the type of person she is. Valyor winds up getting trapped with a bomb about to explode. He doesn't want any help from a filthy Trock, but despite his insults and not wanting any help, almost preferring to die, as Starfire says,
You may not value my life, but I still value yours!
The two escape, the enemies are defeated, and by the end of the episode, you might expect Valyor to have changed his mind. His perceptions have been wrong, and now he grows from the situation, no longer judging Tamaranians for simply being themselves. A classic moral happy ending to this kids show story. But that's not what the episode does. He simply chalks it up to Starfire being one of the good ones. His mind has not changed, in fact, almost the opposite. When the Titans stand by Starfire, he then considers Earthlings to be just like the Trucks. And the episode ends with Starfire delivering this message.
I'm sorry Valior treated you like that. If I'd known, I never would have let it happen.
None of us would.
There is nothing you could have done. There will always be people who say mean words because you are different, and sometimes their minds cannot be changed. But there are many more people who do not judge others based on how they look or where they are from. Those are the people whose words truly matter.
Truck is one of the best individual Teen Titans episodes, and it dealt with the topic of racism in an unbelievably nuanced way. They very easily could have simply had a villain who was already not a good person and evil just be given this trait. But instead they chose to give it to a hero, that the concept of fighting evil doesn't inherently make you a good person. They didn't beat him up because he deserved it, and he didn't change his mind because that's what was supposed to happen. What happened here was realistic, and it perfectly showcased the character of Starfire, dealing with even the worst people with the kindness of her heart. It built her up without the need to have her tear someone else down.
I could turn into the biggest, strongest, fastest animals on Earth. But you know what, dude? Sometimes it's best to be a slow, tiny turtle.
Beastboy's a tough character for me. I like him and he's very entertaining to watch. The majority of time you see him, he'll be cracking jokes, attempting to make others laugh, or just making himself laugh. But at the same time, he's not exempt from his serious moments. Very frequently, often in relation to Raven, Beastboy shows a more mature side to himself, and I think he, better than the others, makes you empathize with him. What he goes through is often very genuine. The emotions being felt are raw. There's not quite a message being delivered that you're supposed to take away. You're simply just observing. And the Terra arc is a prime example of this. I'm going to talk about the Terra arc later in this video, so I don't want to get too much into it right now. But observing Beastboy throughout it all, you see it's just love, anger, confusion, betrayal. You feel for him, and I think this gets amplified because he's supposed to be the funny guy. You want to see him happy, so when he breaks character, you know something is wrong. He's a joy to watch, and at the same time has a way of reaching your heart.
My body may have its limitations, but if I put my mind to it, there's no limit to what I can do.
Aside from being the loud and boisterous tech guy on the team, Cyborg's best moments come when he's truly overcoming the obstacles which face him mentally. His humanity. While you'll almost always spot him building something, upgrading tech, and even improving the robotic aspects of himself, through multiple episodes we see that it's not a simple thing for him to accept, and he doesn't want to lose it. In fact, Cyborg's robotic parts are often used as an allegory for having a disability, and they tackle this almost immediately in episode 5 of the first season. In the episode The Sum of His Parts, Cyborg accidentally runs out of battery and is dumped into an underground tunnel where he is saved by Fix-It, a robotic hermit who loves to repair broken machines. After initially saving Cyborg, he deems his human parts biological imperfections and intends to fix them, making him fully robotic. And this prospect terrifies him, as there was genuinely nothing he could do in the situation. But fortunately, his memories make their way into Fix-It's view when he's downloading them, and it touches a side of him which he's since long lost, as he too was once human. And Cyborg promises to help him regain what he's lost. This episode really taught Cyborg to value his humanity. And to really hammer in this point, a kid with a prosthetic arm shows off to his friend how alike the two are, only for Cyborg to mention that it's the arm that it's attached to which makes them alike. While these words of wisdom are incredibly good-natured, in the later episodes we see just how difficult it is for even Cyborg to believe that. In the episode Only Human, Cyborg gets incredibly upset that he can no longer push himself past his limits like he used to when he was fully human. Being a robot, these things are just now pre-programmed. To give him a parallel to face this episode, the villain is Atlas, a 100% robot who initially beats Cyborg in a video game. But after challenging him to a real-life fight, Atlas yet again wins and declares Cyborg being incapable of winning for being part human. It really attempts to push home the idea that Cyborg is in the worst of both circumstances. He can't beat Atlas because of his human side holding back being an all-powerful machine, and he can't push past his limits because of his robotic side. But in reality, it winds up being that his human side isn't what makes him weak, it's what makes him strong, and he's capable of defeating Atlas. And like everyone, Cyborg struggles with the idea of not fitting in. Later on in Season 3, Cyborg infiltrates Hive Academy under the alias Stone, attempting to uncover a dangerous new device Brother Blood is intending to use. As Stone, Cyborg begins living his new life at Hive undercover, but at the same time feeling normal. He's making friends, competing in school events, taking exams. Life is how it used to be before he was Cyborg. Eventually, he uncovers the device, and Brother Blood even attempts to use Cyborg's insecurity as a bargaining chip.
Serve me, and I can make you what you once were. I can give back your life.
None of this winds up working, and Cyborg returns back to his Titan life. And he has to say goodbye to being normal. An event that kinda saddens him. But yet again, perfectly showcasing Starfire's character, she offers him words of encouragement.
I never got to finish high school because of this. And when I was at the Hive, for a while there I actually felt normal.
I did not know you before, so to me, you are normal.
In a completely ironic sense, what Cyborg deals with is very human. His insecurities. He knows that being a robot doesn't make him weak, but yet he still struggles with wanting to fit into the status quo.
I guess, in the end, there really is no end, just new beginnings.
An outsider's view of someone can often be incredibly skewed, not understanding the truth behind the person. On the surface, Raven is quiet, mysterious, intelligent, and often sarcastic. But Raven is someone who deals with her emotions and the sometimes unhealthy way that it affects her mentally.
I'm not creepy, I'm just different.
She's a character torn between two realities. On one hand, she wants to be a hero who fights to protect people, but on the other hand, she's the key which will release her demonic father and destroy the world. Two completely separate and conflicting scenarios, but both something that she is hyper aware of, and these are where both her strengths and weaknesses are intertwined. To prevent her demonic father from escaping, she must not succumb to his demonic influence, and to do this, she meditates. She must have full control over her own mind, and we see both the healthy and unhealthy ways that she goes about dealing with it. In the episode Nevermore, Raven accidentally loses control of her emotions and traumatizes Dr. Light. Understanding the severity of what she's done, she retreats and tries to get a grip of herself. Meanwhile, Cyborg and Beastboy, in an attempt to cheer her up, ventures into her room where they accidentally get sucked into a mirror which is meant for tapping into Raven's subconscious. In this new dimension, the two come across all of Raven's different emotions personified. While here, the emotion of rage, which got out of control when she was fighting Dr. Light, has since taken the form of her father and is attempting to consume her completely. It's not until the suggestion of Cyborg and Beastboy that Raven fuses all of her emotions together to control and subdue her rage. Raven's emotions are important to her and more of a responsibility than others might realize. But probably the most important thing this episode showed us was, despite her calm outer appearance seemingly being devoid of any emotions, she truly has all of the other emotions. They're just pushed down into a state where she can control them. And controlling them is the key lesson. She wouldn't have been able to overcome her rage had she just tried to fight it. It's when she's welcoming in all of her other emotions when she's truly strong. This episode didn't teach her right away though, as on occasion she still did have a tendency to simply lie about her true emotions outright. And as you all know, lying to yourself only does more harm than good, and this is showcased in the episode Fear itself. In it, Beastboy rents a scary movie and it shakes everyone to their cores. Everyone except Raven, that is. After this, the Titans are attacked by a strange being, and one by one, they are all taken until Raven is the last one standing. Throughout it all, she's kept denying the fact that she was scared. Everything that's happening isn't getting to her, and she's calm as a cucumber. But she inevitably gets pushed to a point where she is forced to acknowledge her fears, and the monsters all go away. The monsters were actually a physical manifestation of her denial that she was afraid, and by ignoring it, it leaked out into the real world. She doesn't have complete control as everyone suspected. In fact, it's quite the opposite. In this case, she was bottling up her emotions and pretending like they didn't exist, and that's not a good thing for anyone to do. Emotions are not a weakness, and pretending like you don't have them because you don't like them isn't healthy. Raven is probably the most complex of all the Titans, and putting into words why she is so great is actually kinda hard, at least for me. I know I like Raven, and I understand that she's complex, but at the same time, she's been the hardest for me to put into words why exactly I like her. Probably one of my favorites though is that she inspires and pushes people like Robin to be better by simply being a Titan, even though she's unaware of it. She chose to fight against the fate that was her father, showcasing just how hopeful of a person she was. So much so that when she dies, Robin travels to literal hell and back to return her to life. Even with the smallest glimmer of hope, Robin sees that in her, and he puts it better than I ever could.
How did you still manage to hope it could all work out?
Because of you. You don't realize it, Raven, but you're actually the most hopeful person I've ever met. From the day you were born, they said you were evil, that you were created to do unspeakable things. But you wished for more. You dared to hope that you could be a hero.
While I didn't talk much about Robin in his segment, it's events like this that really showcase his strengths as a character as well. And it's so in character for Raven to not realize that she's an inspiration. She thinks of herself quite negatively as some sort of evil being, but by simply being herself, she is in no way different to the others. Even when they first met and the team hadn't been formed yet, Raven says how they wouldn't want her on their team. But yet again, Robin, seeing what she just did, recognizes that she probably is just being a bit harsh on herself.
Trust me, if you knew what I really am, you wouldn't want me around.
I know enough.
The reason the Teen Titans work is because they are a team. The defining character differences and the role they fill all mash together beautifully. They play off of each other comedically well, but more importantly, they do the same thing during its heavy moments. One-on-ones are a big deal in this show. They don't just go through wacky adventures, they grow as people.
I am the thing that keeps you up at night. The evil that haunts every dark corner of your mind.
For a show that's all about the Teen Titans, you might expect there to be a whole array of complex villains who perhaps have some sort of personal history or stake in taking down the Titans, especially considering that this is DC. DC has some of the most iconic and memorable villains in all of fiction. However, it really doesn't go for this approach almost ever. Nearly every single bad guy the Titans face all have the exact same motive. Either destroy the city, do some sort of action that'll make them money, or destroy the Titans themselves. None of these go in more depth than their surface level appearance. While this may seem like a slight against the villains, is only brilliantly traded out in favor of the Titans themselves. For a show that wanted to focus on the Teen Titans, that's exactly what is done. Instead of focusing on the characters who stand in their way, what they are instead used for is a method of putting the main characters in unique positions they must overcome. While every villain fundamentally serves the same role, they all serve a unique lesson. Take for example the Puppet King in Season 1 Episode 7 Switched. The Puppet King is a magic puppet who surprisingly wants to take over the city. With his remote control, he has the power to transfer souls into puppets, and he uses this to infiltrate Titan's tower and capture the souls of Robin, Beastboy, and Cyborg. He almost manages to get Raven and Starfire as well, however thanks to Raven's own magic, she prevents that but accidentally winds up switching bodies with Starfire. Throughout the rest of the episode, Raven and Starfire have to learn how to use each other's powers if they want to succeed. And that's an incredibly difficult task for these two because their powers work completely opposite. Starfire gains her abilities through expressing her emotions and letting them flow through her naturally. But Raven, due to her demonic heritage, is a liability if she doesn't keep herself in check. And it is only through calm meditation that she can channel the completely chaotic energy held within her. And it was such a great decision putting this episode towards the beginning of the series because it shows us a bit of the dynamic between them. They both get infuriated with each other's lack of control with their powers. But that anger stems from not knowing each other. They're not best friends at this point. In fact, they're both semi-strangers to each other. So to gain an understanding, they sit down and tell each other stories about their respective past. The episode ends as they all do, with the heroes saving the day and the Puppet King is taken down. As a nice little cherry on top, the next day Starfire joins Raven in meditation and Raven offers to go to the mall with Starfire, just the two of them. You see how much the villain wasn't part of the equation when describing the episode? And that's sort of the point I was getting at. The villains aren't interesting, they're incredibly basic, but they put the characters in unique scenarios and draw something out of them. And that's the least you can ask for out of a villain. So long as they do something like that, it doesn't matter how complex or simple their motivations may be, because it almost always causes you to forget that they're relatively uninteresting. Even the main antagonist Slade doesn't break through this mold. His motivation too is the simple downfall of the Titans and the destruction of the city. But similar to the other villains, it is what Slade brings out of the characters where his role in everything truly shines. He's better than anyone else at bringing the worst out of the characters, whether it be the friendship, the teamwork, the trust that they've built up through all of these episodes. The moment Slade gets involved, all of those things get put to the test, and it's never an easy hurdle for them to overcome. When he fights Raven, she may be overpowered, making him look physically weak, but what he accomplished was showing a dark and evil side to the Titans that make them fear her. But best of all is his dynamic to Robin. Being the main protagonist and antagonist respectively, these two serve as foils to one another. Slade is everything Robin has sworn to fight against, and Robin is the exact person Slade believes he can corrupt. But what truly gets under Robin's skin is just how similar they are. They are both determined, and neither of them will stop until they get what they want. And Slade exploits this side of Robin. Robin gets so obsessed with stopping him that it comes at the cost of his friends. He yells at them, he loses his composure, and he doesn't trust them. Not enough to rely on them, which is why he even becomes a villain himself. And side tangent, but Red X, probably one of the coolest things to come out of the show in its entirety, especially because it was a completely original concept and creation. Robin's plan of being Red X fails, and he is set back even further because he lost the trust of his friends in the process. Everything that Robin is, his leadership, his assured nature, all gets completely thrown away when Slade plays a direct role. He brings out the worst version of himself. And even later in the series, when Slade is defeated, we see just how important he was to Robin in the episode Haunted. By this point, Slade is believed to be gone for good, but Robin doesn't believe so. He's up until the late hours of the night scanning footage for any signs that he might still be around. And throughout the episode, Robin's suspicions get confirmed as he finds himself yet again battling against Slade, attempting to prevent him from destroying the city. But the twist of the episode is that this Slade isn't real. Robin is finding himself at a battle with himself mentally. The stress and prospect of Slade's return is metaphorically and literally killing him. It shows just how important Slade is to Robin, and this episode, better than any, showcases how even when he's not there, Slade always brings the worst out of the characters. I will say there was one detail at the end of the episode which I think takes away from everything just a little bit, and it's the fact that everything was happening to Robin due to a chemical he breathed in when he picked up Slade's mask at the beginning of the episode. I do believe it would have been vastly more impactful had it all simply just been spurred on by stress, but nevertheless, it was still a great episode with a good twist. When it comes to the villains though, personally I'm a fan of Blackfire and Jinx, though I genuinely have no reason to actually like Blackfire. From what I've gathered, she has almost no redeemable qualities whatsoever and doesn't even really seem justified in her villainous tendencies. She's just bad, and maybe that's why I like her. But as for Jinx, I was pleasantly surprised to see her get a slight redemption arc towards the end of the series. Like I said earlier, the villains are incredibly basic, no motivation, no development, they simply exist to be the bad guy. But in the episode Lightspeed, it focuses its attention on the Hive 5, as they attempt to capture the introduced Kid Flash. The episode pays most of its attention to Jinx as she tries to prove herself to Madame Rouge as a serious villain. Kid Flash, by all stretches of the imagination, is much more powerful than the Hive and spends most of his time toying around with them, particularly Jinx because he developed a crush on her. He's curious as to why she tries to go to such extreme lengths to prove herself to someone who isn't valuing her in the slightest. And we learn that being a villain is all that she's ever known.
I'm bad luck. Good was never an option for me. At least with the Brotherhood of Evil, I can be somebody. I'll get respect.
You don't need to hurt people to feel good about yourself.
And by the end of the episode, she makes a complete 180 turn. She helps Kid Flash out and abandons her goals of being part of the Brotherhood of Evil. Also, apparently after this, she just started dating Kid Flash in the comics, which I didn't know existed. I don't know what this is, but apparently it exists, where she genuinely seems happy. And she even makes another appearance towards the end of the series where she helps out the side of good. I just always thought that this slight character development in this one side villain was a pleasant surprise, and a glimpse into other aspects this series could have had where it was really lacking.
Her name was Terra. She was gifted with tremendous power and cursed with it as well. She was a dangerous enemy and a good friend, and she was one of the bravest people that I have ever known.
Then there was Terra. Believe me, I did not forget about her. I've been talking about all these greater themes and messages that have been being delivered in all of these episodes, but to be honest, when I was a kid, I didn't pick up on really any of those. I watched because I thought the characters were great, the show was funny, and it was action-packed. But even when you're oblivious to the greater meaning of something, some things are just impossible to miss, and being hit in the feels is one of them. The storyline of Terra was probably one of the greatest emotional roller coasters I'd ever been through as a child. Out of all of the villains, Terra might be the only one to have ever brought emotional stake to the story, and that was because she was so different to everyone else that they dealt with so far. Slade lurks in the shadows and controls things from there. Brother Blood likes the spotlight. Mad Mod, British guy. Trigon, the devil himself. But all of those villains you never really cared for. They added an element that really focused on the Titans and brought something out of them, but with Terra, she was the focus. And Slade during this whole thing, it may very well be the most devious he's ever been in the entire series. We've seen his ability to get under everyone's skin, but with Terra, it hit a bit extra. With her, it was pure emotional manipulation, and exploiting her when she was always at her weakest. Initially, when she made her debut in Season 2, she was incredibly insecure over her lack of control with her powers, and she confided this insecurity in Beastboy. And when she accidentally loses control after an encounter with Slade, he promises to keep what happened a secret. But at the end of the episode, when she's offered to become a Titan, Robin says how they can help train her, which in her mind was a complete betrayal of trust, and she runs away. But in reality, Robin just figured it out, and it was all one big misunderstanding. But Slade uses this opportunity to exploit her, as she's now in an incredibly vulnerable position, and he recruits her as his apprentice. And this isn't even the only time that he does this. In fact, he does this in an even more extreme scenario in the episode Betrayal. By this point, Terra has reconnected with the Titans, only this time as Slade's apprentice unbeknownst to them. She's worked on regaining their trust, and it does in fact work. She infiltrates Titan's tower and intends on ambushing everyone when they least expect it. And this plan does carry through, however, there was a bit of an unexpected snag in the whole thing. Beastboy. Upon her return, Beastboy has attempted to rekindle their lost flame, and he does his typical thing. And through his persistence, Terra once again begins to warm up to everyone. But it was too late. By the time she recognized this, she had already carried out her betrayal. However, she did pull Beastboy away from the ambush, not wanting him to get caught up in it. Despite the cute carnival montage, her betrayal was still a betrayal, and no one knew that better than Slade. And all he does to take full control of the situation is tell Beastboy the truth. And this guts everyone. Terra realized that she could trust everyone when it was too late. And Beastboy was just betrayed. She was working for their sworn enemy, and any perception of what was real and what was fake, he couldn't trust, and he turns his back on her. And you can't really blame him. And what does Slade do once again? He takes a now even more vulnerable Terra and manipulates her to hate the Titans more than she ever has. It's just so heartbreaking seeing Terra be so manipulated. And it's not an easy obstacle for the Titans to overcome either. In fact, Terra and Slade successfully take over the city and defeat everyone. But to defeat Terra, they have to completely cast aside their feelings towards her and, as they put it, treat her like she's just another criminal. Which goes to show the emotional weight that she had. They've never had to go against somebody else that they actually cared for. And it's because they care that it's kind of a weakness. And once they cast their feelings aside, they put her on the back foot and she can't handle them. Slade obviously doesn't care and demeans her for being a coward, for which she finally recognizes how little he truly cared about her. She is inevitably capable of breaking free from Slade's control, which not only results in her literally killing him, but also her sacrificing her own life to save the entire city. If memory serves me correct, this might have been the first time I was ever exposed to a villain who wasn't a villain. You see, when Mumbo robs a bank, you recognize, yep, that's the bad guy, that's what bad guys do. But with Terra, there was this whole mix of, why is this happening? No matter how much she turned to the side of evil, you were always able to recognize that at her core, Terra wasn't a bad person. And the Titans even recognize that. Sometimes people are just caught at their worst, but that doesn't mean that's who they are, nor how they're going to be remembered. Robin at his worst was a villain. Raven at her worst almost ended the world. But those moments don't define them. They were just lucky enough that others were still there to help them. And unfortunately for Terra, that didn't happen. It was all just one big unfortunate tragedy. And what an arc to scar a child like myself back then with. She does appear later on again in the final episode of the series where she's alive but doesn't have any memories of her past. As a kid, I had no idea what was going on here. Was this Terra? Was it a girl who just looked like her? Does she have amnesia and doesn't remember? Or does she remember everything but is choosing to actively avoid involving herself? I don't know. And now, 16 years later, I still don't know. I just want to take a minute to absolutely fawn over the amazing cast the series had. These actors have done such a phenomenal job bringing these characters to life. Scott Menville, I unironically think, has the coolest voice in the world. Plus, he also voices Lloyd Irving from Tales of Symphonia, which is my favorite game of all time. Hynden Walsh gives Starfire such an endearing innocence. Terra Strong, legendary actress. Greg Sipes makes Beastboy fun because it sounds like he's having fun. And Carrie Payton, I kid you not when I say this, there has not been a cyborg since who has even come close to ever matching his booyah. Booyah! And the same goes for the supporting cast. Ashley Johnson as Terra brought so much emotion to the character, which was vital to making her work. And Ron Perlman as Slade, cold, calculated, and intimidating. The cast was by all means perfect and, to me, defined these characters. Despite the show's popularity, it was cancelled after 5 seasons, leaving storylines unfinished. It's not exactly known why it was cancelled. A whole bunch of different theories exist, but none that I could find that was just the answer. This was incredibly unfortunate, as each season had a dedicated main focus. The only one who didn't get theirs was Starfire. And still to this day, fans have been clamoring for a 6th season. We did get a movie later on, but despite the fans begging, they instead made Teen Titans Go. And we would even get teased with the original return of the Titans in this series.
This is the Teen Titans. Can anyone hear us? We think we found a way back.
But yet again, all we got was a spin-off movie which doesn't carry the heart of the original and instead focuses on the new iteration. And to this day, fans are still wanting and asking for a season 6. Will we ever get it? I do not know. At its core, Teen Titans was a show about friends. At no point in the entire series does any single character overcome a problem on their own. They always believe in each other, especially when they don't believe in themselves. The characters were not only entertaining and believable, but but they were also relatable. The subtle nuances of each of the Titans showed that they weren't perfect, and each of them, while they are still heroes, they can get frustrated, they're insecure, and they have moments of weakness. But it's about overcoming those things, leaning on those you trust to make you a better person. The show had the characters, the messaging, and the respect to trust the audience with what it was telling us.